Hello, and welcome to the educational webinar series from Seed to Sale, Risk Management Essentials for the Cannabis Industry. This is being brought to you by Hub International Limited. The topic that we will be covering, conflict prevention and de-escalation in the cannabis workplace. I'm your host and moderator, Jay Verdi, the Chief Sales Officer and leader of Hub's Cannabis Specialty Practice Group for North America. We are the pioneers for risk management and insurance solutions for the cannabis industry and have a dedicated specialty practice group devoted to advocating as thought leaders and innovators for this very exciting and fiercely emerging industry. Again, this topic, conflict prevention and de-escalation in the cannabis workplace, is part of a larger, more robust on-demand webinar series that is being brought to you by Hub. Joining us and leading the conversation are our experts, Brian Schnazy and Isaac Munson. Brian is a senior risk consultant with Hub's Risk Services Division and a member of the Organizational Resilience Consulting team. He is a former FBI special agent, has 15 years of experience managing risk in public and private entities, and has led through crisis and critical incidents in the big box retail industry. Isaac is also a senior risk consultant with Hub's Risk Services Division. He has over 15 years of professional experience managing risk in various public and private industry settings. During his service as a state trooper, Isaac accumulated advanced training and experience in law enforcement, public safety, investigations, and de-escalation. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Let's get started.
Thanks, Jay. So, Jay, we appreciate the intro, and we're glad to be here with you to have this conversation. As just about everyone knows, in the last 18 months through the emergence of a global pandemic, we've seen a lot of new examples of conflict and aggression arising in retail environments, in workplaces, and in the public at large. And here on this screen, you can see a few examples of some that have made headlines. Gentleman on the left got pretty irritated when he was confronted about a mask in a retail environment. You'll notice a common theme across a lot of these conversations is cell phone video emerging from these events, so keep that in the back of your mind as we talk through this. Gentleman on the right is actually an employee at a large box retailer who successfully de-escalated an incident that was being recorded. He was kind of hailed as a hero out in the internet world. And then on center, you see a couple of examples of news coverage from retail environments where conflict and aggression actually escalated and had some pretty negative consequences for both the business, the employees, but then also in some cases the customers.
So Isaac, in addition to unruly customers or those who don't abide by the rules or don't want to, what are some other examples of workplace violence?
Yeah, great question, Jay. So when we're talking about conflict prevention and de-escalation, the understanding is that the goal there is to prevent aggression or an act of violence from occurring. And so there are a couple different regulatory bodies that define violence in the workplace, and they're defined by type. And so you can see across the spectrum here, there are a variety of ways violence can find its way to a workplace. And criminal intent is type 1, and that essentially means someone is committing a crime. They're attempting to rob a storefront or potentially mug an employee or a customer. Type 2 is customer or client violence, meaning the aggressor is a person that's at your place of business and they become aggressive either toward other customers or toward your staff. And it's typically more about some kind of conflict interpersonal between those two. Type 3 is worker versus worker. So this could be two staff members having a conflict that becomes aggressive. A lot of times we'll see those kinds of exchanges between direct reports and managers or between business owners and staff. And then type 4 is personal relationship. So think about domestic violence coming to your workplace. This could be an angry ex-husband of one of your staff members coming to the workplace seeking that person out, or it could also take the shape of a romantic relationship that exists between employees and they have some kind of domestic violence type dispute within the workplace. And then type 5 is ideological violence. This is a lot less likely to occur in most workplaces, but think about your organization being protested or picketed, or if there is some moral objection to your presence in a community, you might draw the attention of people that could potentially become aggressive or violent. So those are the types of violence. That's the way they're defined. And when we talk about de-escalation, we're mostly talking about type 2 and type 3. You're not using words to try and talk down someone who's trying to rob you with a firearm, for example, or using your words to try and disperse protesters. This is really more about interpersonal relationships and conflict that arises in everyday workplace activities.
Well, thanks, Isaac. So, Brian, with so much volatility as of late, what can be done to reduce or avoid such acts of violence?
Yeah, Jay, well, first, we have to understand there are triggers and an escalation period for acts of violence. Like Isaac said, random acts of violence do happen, but where you and your team have a real opportunity is in recognizing the potential triggers and de-escalating that situation. The fact that we're living in an era of unprecedented and compounding triggers makes this all the more important. COVID, masks up, masks down, 6 feet apart, financial hardship, unemployment, the loss of a loved one, social or political unrest, cabin fever, the look on the face of your security guard. These are all potential triggers, Jay.
So again, for the complexities of the cannabis industry and the evolving legal landscape, there's no doubts that these tough situations will arise. So what can you tell us, Brian, about de-escalation?
Yeah, very simple. De-escalation aims to use communication and trained tactics, strategies to calm a situation. And it's not about being right, and it's not about winning.
Great, thanks, Brian. So Isaac, what if someone is not able to verbally de-escalate a situation successfully? What if a customer is too inebriated or unwilling to comply with the rules or doesn't like the security guard's face? If an employee and manager verbal altercation kind of turns into a physical conflict, what can be done?
Yeah, it's a really critical part of this conversation is understanding that de-escalation strategies and conflict prevention strategies have limitations. And what we want to equip our frontline workers to know and understand, and our managers to know and understand, is that any conflict or aggressive confrontation you might find yourself in, you're a participant. Even if you're the target, you are playing a role in that exchange and that communication. And so you have choices in those moments. You can either use your words, your language, your nonverbals to escalate and make things worse. You can do your best to use your words and your nonverbals to de-escalate and try and bring calm. Or in a work environment, you can also retreat. And retreating is sometimes an effective way of de-escalating, recognizing that this isn't working, like you described, Jay. My words are not bringing calm to this situation. It seems to maybe be making things even more confrontational. And that's the point at which we want employees to understand you're not the police, you're not medical professionals, you're not a psychologist. Sometimes walking away, creating space is going to make the situation safer for you, for the people in the store or in the work environment, and it gives everyone an opportunity to cool off a bit. And so in a conflict, you have choices, and the way you engage with that person is going to have an impact on whether things are escalating or de-escalating.
It's great stuff. Brian, can you share some more tips on how cannabis owners and operators might implement such conflict prevention and de-escalation in their workplace with their staff?
Sure. Yeah. I think first we would recommend that you decide who in your organization should own and be accountable for a workplace safety program. And that program should undoubtedly give your team the education and the training that they need to understand agitated people, understand the stages of escalation that we're talking about, give them an awareness of the verbal and non-verbal communication that they're interpreting and also exuding, hand them de-escalation strategies, and then keep this in mind, like you saw at the beginning of the video, you and your team should just assume that these interactions are being recorded and will live on in the digital world. So design your training and give your staff direction with that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know we're just kind of scratching the surface here, and there's probably a lot more that we could dive into. Isaac, is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, sure. There's a much bigger, broader security risk management approach that we advocate for with all clients. Clients in the cannabis industry specifically are heavily regulated, and they're already doing a lot of the physical security risk management really well, because you're heavily scrutinized, you're heavily regulated. So physical controls like security technology or traditional locks, gates, lighting, access controls, guards, these kinds of things are usually accounted for in these environments. And where we're advocating for clients to think about next level steps they can take is around their administrative controls. So having a thorough security function that's comprehensive, including physical controls, but then also administrative and training controls. So de-escalation falls into that space, violence prevention initiatives fall into that space, and conflict management fall into that space. So when you've got your security accounted for around your facilities, the next step is to really start thinking about how do we equip staff to be successful in this environment, no matter what they're confronted with, either from the outside, from a customer or client, or internally from a newer, potentially difficult employee that you have on staff.
Yeah, based on all the heavy regulatory compliance for licensing, there's an extreme emphasis on cannabis facilities and retail dispensaries meeting a high level of security requirements already. So, one would think, isn't that enough?
Yeah, that's a great point, and we do hear that a lot. And in health and safety management and in security management, when we're talking to clients, really in any industry, we're saying meeting regulatory compliance is a great first step, but it's really just the point of entry to be doing business legally and safely. And what we advocate for is meeting and exceeding regulatory compliance requirements. So you're doing all these great things to be licensed, to be in business, to be a responsible community member and person doing business. But then if you have opportunities to do some basic things that can put you above and beyond just being compliant, it's really going to position you to be a different type of employer, to be a place people want to work, people are proud to work, and over time you'll really get buy-in from the community when they start to see that you're doing everything you can to be a good, responsible business person.
Yeah, it's definitely peace of mind, right? I mean, so guys, this is great stuff. Now that we've addressed some of the topics that cannabis owners and operators should be aware of, Brian, can you kind of share some of the ways Hub Risk Services have partnered with clients?
Yeah, thanks. Well, we specialize in helping clients get started with a number of risk management programs and frameworks. Our subject matter expertise lies mainly in security risk management, cyber, theft and fraud. We guide and coach on business continuity planning and emergency action, disaster planning. We offer clients tabletop and readiness exercises to test and help them prove that they can do what their plans say they can do. And of course, as an insurance broker, we offer review and tailored coverage solutions too, in helping you understand not only how to transfer the risk that you may have, but also to manage the retained risk that you do have.
Thank you so much, Brian and Isaac, and all of our participants for joining the discussion. It goes without saying that having a former state trooper and a former FBI agent on our side is truly a wonderful thing. Please remember that we have many more topics on the horizon as part of our educational Seed to Sale webinar series. It's imperative that you engage with the experts in order to protect your cannabis operations. For more information and to learn more about how Hub can partner with you, please visit us at hubinternational.com/cannabis or email us at cannabis@hubinternational.com. Let us do the worrying so you can focus on growing. Thank you.
Thanks.